In this video, I will share 5 secrets as to how to successfully ride 1,000 kilometers on Zwift in a single ride.
And this warming up, waiting to start a ride with my pace partner. I'm going to go with Miguel, and Miguel is going to be riding at 33 k's an hour. So with that speed, we're going to be doing 3 hours per 100 kilometers. So we're looking at about 30 hours, 36 hours. That's going to be a very long day in the saddle. That's part of the challenge.
Now to be absolutely clear about this kind of ride, this is a randonnee style of ride. It means that you have a time limit in which to complete the distance, and you have ample opportunity to stop, have a rest, go to the washroom, and even have a sleep, as long as you finish it within the required time. And because this is a modified randonnee, slightly different to that in real life, I have given myself a 50% limit on what is required in real life. In real life, the 1,000 kilometer brevet has a time limit of about 75 hours, and to do it on Zwift, I have given myself a limit of 37.5 hours. The first secret I want to share is that you have to choose the right robo partner on Zwift.
This is a follow-up ride to the first ride that I've done, and the idea with this ride is to try to build on the experience that I've built up from the last 700 kilometer ride.
From my previous experience, I learned that if you start off too quickly, it is guaranteed that you're going to burn out and you won't be able to continue past your limit. My limit in the last attempt was that of 700 kilometers, and I started off with Maria at a speed of about 37 kilometers per hour. And I found that by 600 kilometers, I was so exhausted and I had to quit at 700 kilometers. So what I've done this time is I've decided to go with a slower pace partner. And this is Miguel, who was doing the volcano circuit at about 33 kilometers per hour. So my rationale for choosing Miguel was that I would go slower and save my legs, so that when I got to the 700 kilometer mark, I might still have enough energy to continue past that and hopefully get to 1,000 kilometers.
I've already had a big cup of coffee, not decaf this time, but proper good old-fashioned coffee.
But I will admit, at the beginning, I was really quite frustrated with the slow pace. I really thought that I had made the wrong decision, and I really wanted to just keep going much faster than what Miguel was going. But towards the end of the ride, I totally appreciated my decision, because by the time I got to 700 kilometers, that is when I started to suffer, and I then wanted to actually go slower. But fortunately, my legs were still good enough that I could keep up with Miguel for the remainder of the ride. A big concern that I did have was that riding with Miguel, that I might not have enough time to complete the distance of 1,000 kilometers within 37.5 hours.
Last time I was trying to do it uninterrupted without stopping at all, but I don't think I can do 1,000 k's uninterrupted.
And that is because Miguel was riding at just 33 kilometers per hour, and 33 kilometers per hour equates to about 100 kilometers in 3 hours. And if you take that, multiply that by 10, it means that I would have to complete, if I just rode continuously with Miguel without any stops, it'll mean that I would have to ride 1,000 kilometers in 30 hours. And that gave me just 7.5 hours to be able to do all the other biological things and rest, so that I could make it within the allotted time. But I will tell you exactly about how things worked out in the next segment. Now, the second secret is to choose the appropriate course to ride on Zwift.
Okay, so this is now 200 k's and finally settling in nicely into the ride. And so a few things. I've managed to find out that there's at least one other guy that's doing a 500k. I think he's got 250 k's left. So at least I have some company for quite a long time on this ride.
Therefore, when I looked at my available choices for the 1,000 kilometer second attempt, I reluctantly accepted that I would have to ride with Miguel on the volcano circuit. Now, the volcano circuit is not a completely flat circuit. It has at least 46 meters of elevation for every 12.7 kilometers. So that's quite a bit of elevation. And in the entire 1,000 kilometers, I had to climb at least 4,000 meters. Now, if you take that into consideration, that is nowhere close to what you normally would have to climb during, for example, a PvP or in the Cooley challenge that we just did recently. However, on Zwift, at that speed, having to climb an extra 4,000 meters was a huge strain on my endurance and on my strength. However, once again, the benefit of having to be able to ride those extra 46 meters every lap was that I then had to get out of the saddle and change my position. And with that, I prevented a lot of the pressure point complications. And what I did was that during the times that I had to stand and ride uphill, I would try to gain some distance on the pace partner so that when we came to the downhill, I was ahead of the pace partner, and then I could actually sit and coast and actually not have to ride for that short duration until the pace partner would catch up with me.
So far, it's taken me almost 6 hours to do my first 200 Ks. But at the same time, it's a lot slower than last time, but I'm hoping that the slower pace will mean that I've got more reserve to be able to push beyond my 700 that I did last time. And maybe there's a good chance I can actually get closer to the 1,000. But of course, it all depends. I mean, nothing is perfect. So of course, this route, as I said earlier on, has got lots of opportunity to stand. So that does help to reduce some of the pressure on the contact points.
And so by doing that, I afforded myself short micro breaks to actually have a rest during the ride, which I wasn't able to do in my first attempt with Maria on the Tempest Fusion, because in that situation, it was just a constant push all the way without any kind of rest. So the elevation gain had some drawbacks, but I think it also had some major advantages, and it's definitely something you should consider when you are making your attempt for 1,000 kilometers or more on Zwift. Now, the third secret to trying to do a 1,000 kilometer on Zwift relates to time management off the bike. From riding brevets in real life, I was well aware of the importance of being very strict on my times. Now, from the calculations that I spoke about earlier, where I had at least 30 hours of continuous riding to complete and 7.5 hours of rest, I had to make sure that my rest periods between my efforts were not of such a nature that I was going to exceed my total of 7.5 hours, which I had allocated for rest during my ride. So what I tried to do was, first of all, I tried to minimize the number of stops that I had to make. And so what I found was that when I had to go to the washroom, sometimes I would just use one of these detergent bottles so that I didn't have to stop riding. However, when I had to go to the washroom for a real activity, I had to get off the bicycle.
Well, surprise, surprise, I actually have to take a break at 3:22 kilometers and the time 9:35. The stomach is just not right, so
I took a break at 250 kilometers and another at 500 kilometers, and on both of those two occasions I had to go to the washroom, and I combined it with a rest of about 45 to 50 minutes of complete sleep. So the time that I was off the bicycle for those two periods was at least about an hour on each occasion, and that gave me at least 2 hours of solid sleep. It's important that you try to minimize the time off your bike so that you are able to at least meet your cut-off times that you have set for yourself when you're riding your 1,000 kilometers on Zwift. The fourth secret relates to using short sleep breaks at periods of which I felt fatigued. And I'll tell you how I did this. When I found that I was starting to slow down from the peloton and not able to keep up with Miguel, and this was between 700 and 800 kilometers, I found that I first tried to just drink lots more glucose, have some sandwiches, drink lots of Coca-Cola, drink more caffeine, and I found that that was not sufficient to relieve the fatigue that I was experiencing. And so what I then decided was that the next time I would get dropped by the group, I would rather stop and sleep for an entire cycle. And the entire cycle is what I mean by that is the amount of time that it takes to complete one circuit. So once I would stop, the avatar would stop and stand at the side of the road, and it will take about 20 minutes for the group to go all the way around the circuit and catch up with me. And in that time, I would then go and lie down and have a complete sleep. I would set my timer for 15 minutes, and of that 20 minutes, I would have at least 15 minutes of solid sleep. I found I had to do that at least on four occasions between 700 and 1,000 kilometers. And these were spaced at about between 50 and 100 kilometers each on each occasion. But what I found was that each time I actually stopped to actually have a good rest and a good sleep, I was completely refreshed and my legs felt really good. And I was then able to keep up with Miguel before I had to take another break to stop, sleep, and recover.
It's at 900 Ks. From 7 to 900 Ks has been an absolute nightmare. Oh, I really struggled. I got dropped so many times and I was extremely exhausted. Had to keep getting off and trying to sleep. It seems as though that's my biggest weakness, is just not being able to cope with the sleep deprivation. But as soon as I sleep, I seem to recover enough to be able to then keep with the group. So the group, the loop is about 20 minutes, and so what I've done is I'd get dropped off the back, immediately stop and try to sleep immediately, and set my alarm to be able to go off at after 15 minutes, and then this will give me 5 minutes to warm up and hopefully regroup with the other guys once they catch up with me again. Yeah, I was too tired at the 800 K mark to record anything, so yeah, and even with this 900, I'm probably going to stop again at 950, and then hopefully I can push on to 1,000. Okay.
For me, this is extremely interesting in that the fatigue and the slow pace that I was experiencing at that time between 700 kilometers and 1,000 kilometers was really related to mental fatigue more than physical fatigue. So it seems as though my physiology was such that I was still able to continue riding, but my brain was telling my body to slow down and to shut down because the brain was getting fatigued, whether it was just for being up for such a long time, which was at that stage in excess of 24 hours, or whether it was just the repetitive nature of having to ride in the circuit with Miguel. What I would suggest to you is you need to try to find out for yourself what is the main cause for you becoming fatigued, and then you can work out exactly how would you go about combating that fatigue, whether it is increasing your glucose, your caffeine, your fluids, or whether you just get off and sleep and rest and then return to riding. And this leads me to the fifth and final secret to trying to ride 1,000 kilometers on Zwift, and that was take as many strategies as possible to prevent Shermer's neck. Now, Shermer's neck is something that is very common in the randonneering community, and it occurs once the occipital muscles that help to hold your skull in an upright position on your neck become fatigued. Once those muscles become fatigued, it seems as though the person is not able to hold the head up and they just seem to droop it forward. It is also possible, yet although it's not proven, that it may also relate to some kind of pressure on the nerves or claudication of the nerves that actually may lead to the same kind of weakness of the affected muscles. People that are predisposed to getting Shermer's neck are those that have had either a previous episode of Shermer's neck, or have had a previous injury to the neck, or have to ride in a position where they're hunched over forward for long periods of time with their head severely hyperextended. Fortunately, to date, I have not had Shermer's neck, but my two risk factors involve neck injuries from previous bicycle accidents, as well as riding a time trial bicycle for this specific event. So what I then tried to do was I tried to optimize my position on the bicycle by using a stem extension to lift the height of my handlebars so that I was not stooped over. I used one that lifted the handlebars by about 2 to 3 inches, and this gave me significant more upright position, took a lot of the strain off my neck, and allowed me to ride without any pain. The other strategy that I employed to try to prevent Shermer's neck from occurring was that on every downhill that I came to, I tried to make sure that I was well ahead of the pace partner so that I could get off the saddle, stretch out my back, stretch out my neck, and try to rest those muscles as much as possible. And because this happened on a 12-kilometer circuit where there were at least 2 downhills of about 20 to 30 seconds each, it gave me at least about a minute of complete rest of the neck and back muscles, and that made a huge difference with regard trying to avoid Shermer's neck. I have to admit, I came really close to that 1,000 kilometers, but I actually did not complete the 1,000 kilometers. What I did was I spoke to my coach, Paul Cutting, as well as with my other fellow RAFA challenge, 500 challengers, and we thought that stopping at 999 kilometers and 300 meters would make a fun discussion on Strava. And most of my pals on Strava are totally obsessed by having complete numbers, and we thought that by just stopping short of this landmark ride, it would generate a lot more discussion and fun compared to completing the distance with full numbers. So what I did was that on the final kilometer, I paced it really carefully so that when we came to a downhill, the last 300 meters of that downhill, I just made sure that I coasted all the way down, right down to Oceanside City, and I just allowed the bike to come to a complete halt all on its own. And of course, there was a lot of discussion on Zwift with this. A lot of people really unhappy with the way my decision, but that was part of the fun. It's all just part of, doing something different and giving myself a challenge. I also know that I'm going to try this challenge again in the near future. I intend to try this challenge again in the next 6 weeks' time and try to do a distance of 1,200 kilometers with an elevation of about 6,000 meters. So I don't have any doubt that I will exceed the 1,000 kilometer mark on Zwift, but for this situation, it was really fun, and it definitely generated lots of interesting discussion. So on a side note, this particular challenge actually did put a lot of stress onto me, way more than I expected. About halfway during the ride, I started to develop fevers and chills and severe muscle pain, and I thought it was just part of the experience of riding for such a long distance continuously. I thought I was perhaps maybe slightly dehydrated, and I started to drink a lot more fluids to try to reduce some of my symptoms. I put my fan up to maximum to cool me down, and each time I would stop to have a quick sleep, I would dress up as warmly as possible so that I don't get any of those fever and chills, and I seemed to make it through the ride with that. But the problem was that after the ride, I continued to have the same symptoms, and these symptoms persisted for up to 4 days after completing the ride. And I was due to go back to work, and I thought, I've got to just make sure I can't go back to work. My kind of work involves working with people who have compromised immune systems, and if I did have anything, I actually can't go back to work. So what I did was I had to do a COVID test, and unfortunately the test came back positive. So it seems as though somewhere along the ride, I probably had a COVID bug in me, but the extreme stress of the exercise or the challenge suppressed my immune system to such an extent that perhaps which would have been an asymptomatic infection became symptomatic and gave me almost a full-blown severe COVID infection with fever, muscle pain, severe cough, and all the other complications. I'm still testing positive at the moment, which is now almost 7 days after the ride, And it probably just shows that my immune system was so suppressed that I was not able to suppress the replication of the virus, and that's why I still am positive. And reassure you that as far as I'm aware, nobody has actually caught COVID from a YouTube channel, so hopefully you guys will all be safe. I think the lesson from this is just to be aware that, you know, this kind of challenge is definitely something that you should consider very carefully. Look at the pros, look at the cons, be aware of all the stresses you can have on your physical health in terms of your heart, your kidneys, your lungs, your musculoskeletal system, your immune system. Be aware of all the stresses that go with that before you actually take on this challenge. Maybe just seek some medical advice and just get a clearance from your doctor to make sure that you're in a good situation or good physical condition to actually undertake this kind of activity. And if you're all clear and you're feeling really good, I would encourage everybody to give this kind of ride a try. It's a really good training exercise, and I think, you know, this has really given me the confidence to know that, you know, my kind of preparation that I'm doing for the PBP in 2023 is on track, and I intend to, as I said earlier, I intend to try a slightly longer distance of 1200 kilometers with a slightly greater elevation gain as well. So if you want to watch what happens with that, please stay tuned to this channel. If you've liked this video, press that like button, and I'll see you in the next video. Until the next time, cheers.